Can we have a mortgage then?
Keir Starmer's words there, putting the blame for rising mortgage rates directly at Downing Street's door. Does that hold true?
No. Disingenuous, to say the least, but not surprising, because that's what politicians do, and I don't blame him. He's the leader of the opposition. And I think this mini-budget was certainly the spark that led to rising borrowing costs in sort of wholesale money markets, if you like, that led to the spark in a fall in the pound, which increases inflation by making imports more expensive and so on. But it was by no means the underlying cause. The underlying cause of this is that interest rates across the world are
not
going
like ours.
up. Well, interest rates in America have gone up a lot more than they have here in the UK. So interest rates in the UK are actually quite low by international standards, but they're going up everywhere because we're moving away from 10, 15 years of sort of zombie economics of ultra-low interest rates and lots of money printing. But Keir Starmer is well within its rights, and I would do the same if I was leader of the opposition, to highlight that the way the government has handled the economy since it came into office, the chaos really surrounding the mini-budget, the mixed messaging about when they're going to release their fiscal plan for the Office of Budget Responsibility. I mean, all this kind of lack of grip, it certainly aggravated what's happened on financial markets. But the reality is the pound is now above where it was before the mini-budget, and borrowing costs are slightly up on where they were before the mini-budget, but that's part of a long-term upward trend.
And they've been pricing in, obviously, what's expected to happen with the Bank of England, that they will put rates up when they meet next time in November, and it could be a fairly hefty increase as well to choke off inflation, which is their duty.
I know that's the wide perception that the money markets follow the Bank of England. It's actually the other way around. The money markets have a lot more power than the Bank of England, a lot more power than any politician anywhere, frankly, when it comes to the pricing of financial assets. I wouldn't want to overstate that.
Swaps, they call it.
And I don't want to be glib about it. That is just life. That's the way it is. And the Bank of England, in particular, among central banks around the world, is playing catch-up because it's been so slow, in my view. They would reject this to understand what's happening and so slow to acknowledge that we are in the middle of a long-term rise in inflation, partly because of lockdown, all those supply chain issues, partly because of the war in Ukraine. That hasn't helped commodity prices, has it? But it's a much more bigger, powerful force than that, which is, as I say, the retreat away from a world of ultra-loose money, ultra-low interest rates, to a more normal world, frankly. You know, it's not normal for interest rates to be 0.1 or 1 or 2%.
I remember my mortgage being 11% at one time in the 80s.
Now, that's a really important point, Mark, because you and I, we're of a certain vintage, aren't we?
Yeah.
And we remember interest rates at that point. But this is the thing, because with interest rates now at 6%, which sounds really low when we were lads, mortgage affordability, the share of your income you're spending on your mortgage, which is what really counts, given that people have bought houses at such elevated prices, mortgage affordability or unaffordability is now where it was back in 1988. On average, mortgaged homes were spending 32% of their take-home pay on their mortgage in the late 80s, and at 6%, it's about the same.
Yeah, 2.5 times salary was I remember, was the limit you could
And Liz Truss, whenever she's asked about this, she says, this has nothing to do with me. This is to do with the Bank of England. But I put it to you that if you have just found your dream home and you had a mortgage offer, which has since been withdrawn and re-offered at a much higher rate, or if your variable rate or your fixed rate is coming to an end, and you may have, some people will have to sell their homes because they can't afford to keep mortgage rates at paying a mortgage at an increased rate. They're not going to say, I'm so furious with the Bank of England, are they?
They're not, Gloria, and to be honest with you, this is why I'm an economics journalist. This is why I bang my head against the wall and have done throughout my whole career to try and get this stuff on telly, because it's so important. If you've lost a mortgage offer, you know, this is the kind of thing, I don't want to overstate this. You know, this really impacts people's mental health. This impacts relationships. This impacts marriages. This causes businesses to fail. This causes people's lives to be materially worse because of weird stuff happening in the money markets, gilt yields and swaps, stuff they don't understand. It is our duty to explain what is happening, to take the time and space on television to explain what is happening so people understand. And it's the duty of politicians to explain what is happening. And at the moment, I don't think they are.
And given that, and what could well happen to the economy in this coming year, next year, still talk about recession, or at least flatlining, I think was how the OECD talked about it.
Yeah.
Could that mean that the bank actually starts cutting rates at some time to actually try and get the economy moving again, that things will have gone too far the other way?
I don't think that would happen. I mean, look, if they're... a lot of people follow my financial commentary, right? I've got to be careful what I say on television. But I think there is a sense that asset prices are really overvalued. Shares, bonds, and so on. Housing in some parts of the country, not in others. And so there may be some kind of what we call rather euphemistically a correction. It's such a clean, clinical phrase, but underneath that
mayhem
correction, are all the human things that I was just discussing there with Gloria, all that pain. That could happen. If that happened, then I think there could be a retrenchment back to emergency interest rates. But the best thing for the country is that, don't shoot the messenger. Economists like me are known as dismal scientists. But the best move for the country, the best outcome for the country would be a hopefully gradual but steady increase in interest rates. So interest rates are higher than the rate of inflation. Currently, interest rates are way lower than the rate of inflation. When interest rates are higher than the rate of inflation, people with savings get a real return on those savings. Investment decisions start to make sense. You start to get growth again. For me, Liz Truss's supply-side policies, they're really important. The most important thing for getting growth back is to regulate and normalise our interest rates and our inflation rate, because it all stems from there.
Yeah. OK.
Cheers, Liam. As ever, you'll take us to a brighter day one day. I think
Sunlit uplands, I think Boris Johnson used to call it.
We'll be able to afford going, buying a pint of milk again.